All right. We are live. Craig LeBlanc with the Daily Parks and Rec Show here with David Stalder at Sahuarita, Arizona. I hope I'm not butchering the name.
Okay.
Um, but we had a great pre-show prep call. I think Devin comes from an interesting background of how he got into Parks and Recreation and how he brings a lot of that diverse mindset, his background from a different career path, and how he incorporates that into organizing and really taking his Parks and Rec department from something that might have been struggling to something that's I think is succeeding and got a bright future. So, welcome to the show, Devin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Craig. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Yeah, it was wonderful talking with you pre-show, and I'm excited to share whatever I can with you guys.
Oh man, I was telling before the show, I was like, I don't think we're going to keep this to one show. We may have to make like a series or have you on monthly or weekly or something like that because I love your approach. So maybe get us back to why don't we go all the way back to high school? Who were you in high school? You know, as far as sports, athlete, academics, were you a decent student? Did you hate school like some of these guys? I was a terrible student.
Man, I don't know, Craig. I think I'm a success story in the sense that I didn't know what I was going to do. I wasn't doing great in school, high school specifically.
Mhm.
I joke with my team all the time that I think I graduated high school with like a 2.7, like barely
Yep,
made it through.
I was in
I
that
was,
club, straight D's and
yeah,
C's.
D's get degrees.
Right.
And I think what changed was, well, I was as an athlete, and I always thought, I'm going to do college sports, and then the reality hit me with like NCAA eligibility, and I think that actually lent a lot towards my career path down the line, but
Mhm.
wasn't qualified to walk into D1. I ended up having to go the JUCO route, fix my grades, and I think
Mhm.
the thing that switched for me was the moment I started to have to pay for my school. And I think a lot of people have this realization, so I don't think I'm unique. But the
Mhm.
moment you pay for your school and it's in your pocketbook, I think that's when the reality sets in that you got to take it serious.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's hard. It is hard to make an A. I remember when I was really trying to do good in school, my junior year in high school, and I'm like, I'm gonna make a 4.0. I'm just go for it, see what it takes. I didn't get there. I think I've got like a couple of B's, and I thought I did amazing to get those B's, and I'm like, to get an A, you've got to get almost everything right all the time, no mistakes, and then
yeah,
1A, and then you got 7 other classes. So, I mean, hats off to those people that can get a 4.0 straight A's. That is an accomplishment.
yeah, it's hard. And I think for me, it was a lot of growing up fast. I ended up, it was kind of funny. I sent an email to the coach at the University of Wyoming. That's where I grew up in Laramie, Wyoming, born and raised with Pokes Nation, brown and gold. I was like, I'm going to be a cowboy. And I remember my senior year, I sent him an email and I was like, hey, I'm ready to get on the team. And man, how assumptive of me to just think like you're getting on, right? And thankfully, Paul Barrett, I love him to death. He responded back to me and essentially said, you're not there, and the grades. And so he put me out in touch with a junior college coach. And funny enough, I like the next night I was on their website looking at Coffeyville Community College. It's southeast Kansas, and as I was on, Coach Wood, Robert Wood, reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we don't have any spots right now, but if you want to walk on, I'll try to get you a scholarship if you do the right thing." So at that point, I was like, "Hey, I'll do anything. Is my only option." So my family loaded me up, moved me down to Kansas. I remember my mom when we got there. She was like, "I will not no hard feelings. Like, if you want to come back, don't do sports. Just come to the University of Wyoming. I'll take you back. No questions asked." And I was like, no, I'm going to do this. And so, but man, what a world it was to be able to live in that, and not realizing what a special place I had walked into. One of the premier track and field is what I was in track and field. One of the premier junior college track and field programs in the country. Some really big names have come out of that school. Andre DeGrasse, Canadian sprinter, famous in 2016 in Rio. He was like chasing down Usain Bolt. It was like the picture of the games. He was
No
on my
way.
team. We were like dorm mates. So just a really cool, like being able to get to know people and meet people. And struggle together and train together. It was cool. But I actually got my first part-time Parks and Rec gig there when I was going to school. David Rains, who I love to death, still connected with him. He's still the director down in Coffeyville, and we still stay connected. But he gave me my first job doing refereeing for youth soccer and adult football.
That's
and that was kind of
college. While you were there, you were doing
yeah.
that.
So I'd work weekends reffing. I still have my picture of my first day with a bright pink shirt, Coffeyville Recreation Commission. But man, what a great guy! And I think that was kind of the start, not realizing it, but just working part time. I think that's where I started to realize that I really was. I enjoyed serving the public, serving the community, building community. And not realizing it at the time what impact that would have on me. And man, I love David Rains to death. He's a great guy. But
now what event did you?
So I went into school shot and disc specialist, but when I got there, I had been throwing hammer a little bit, and I started picking it up really quick. So I actually transitioned into hammer and weight, which they don't offer in most of the states in high school. So
you got to be pretty big to throw that thing.
Yeah, big technical. I was actually very small as a thrower at 6'1". I was on the small side, which is crazy. Some of the guys I threw with, especially when I got back to the University of Wyoming, were just behemoths. Like Mason Finley, one guy that I'll never forget throwing with him. He ended up becoming an Olympian. Still, I love Mason to death too. He's a great guy, but he's like 6'9". I think at the time he was like 400 pounds.
Yeah. The guys I saw, I was a javelin thrower, and we were the smaller of the throwers. And with the discus and shot put, they were like 270. They started at 270.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the smaller guys, and then they went up from there. Shot putters were just like mountains. They would just walk up there, and
that was one thing that was nice, was eating as much as I wanted and whatever I wanted. But
yeah,
it was a great time. And out of Coffeyville, I was a 4-time JUCO All-American, and it was really an opportunity. I met my wife in Coffeyville. Been married now. We've been together since then, 13 years, but been married now 7. But just a great, I think if there's a vein in my story, it's everything was like kind of by accident, but the right thing to happen.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's all by chance, but who knows? Might have been destined since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
All right. So what did you study in school? What did you graduate in?
Yeah. So when I was in Coffeyville, I did associates in business, and it was funny because I didn't really care what I was going to do. I was just in it for sports, right? And when I got done in Coffeyville 2 years, Coach Barrett came back out to me and was like, "Hey, I want you on the team." And I was able to get back to the University of Wyoming and finish up my career. But I remember, NCAA is at the time, especially before NIL, was very, very restrictive, and like there was a ton of rules you had to follow, right? And I remember my first day on campus, I walked up to meet with my athletic advisor, and he was essentially like, "Hey, you're a junior now. You have to declare a major, or else you're ineligible." And I hadn't put an ounce of thought into what I was going to do. And so I remember sitting there for like an hour with him, and he's like, "It's okay. We see this all the time." He's like, "Let's see what you're close to." And it was funny because I remember the conversation. He essentially said, "You're already targeting business. That's what you've been studying. Accountants make good money. You should be an accountant." And so I was like, "Sweet, where do I sign?" Right. And so I just got into accounting because of that. And it actually ended up being ultimately a great decision, but again, totally by accident. And so I graduated in 2016 with my BS in accounting.
And how old you were? What, probably 20, 19, 20 at that age?
I think I was 20. I was 23 when I graduated. So with the eligibility.
But when you made that decision to go into accounting.
Oh yeah, I think I was like 20. Yeah, maybe 20.
Sometimes I shudder to think that the 20-year-old version of myself made all these lifetime decisions in an hour.
Yeah. You don't realize it, right? Like I'm so thankful that I had good mentors and good decision makers to help me along the way. And it really, I think, worked out for the best.
Mhm.
I fell on my feet, if you will. And so, yeah, I was on a 5-year plan because I was in athletics and we had so much training and meets and
Right.
everything. So my last year, I actually was no longer, my 5th year, I was no longer eligible, but I was still
Mhm.
on scholarship. And I had to do school and was working a lot at the time. So,
Mhm. And so you graduated, you got your accounting degree. What's your
yeah.
next what's your next move?
Is actually kind of funny, and it goes back to when I moved back to Wyoming. I was looking for work, and in the summers and during breaks, I worked building houses and building cabinets, uh, carpenter and cabinetry maker, and I did that for 5 years, like on my breaks and anytime I could. And when I was coming back, I remember my mom calling me, and she's like, "Hey, the city's hiring a Zamboni driver. You should apply." And so that was 2013, August of
Mhm.
2013. And I applied and I got the job. And so I was working part time at an ice rink, not realizing I was stepping back into Parks and Rec. But it gave me an opportunity to, make a little money, work part time through school. And it was funny because the coordinator, there was an ice and event center coordinator position. And the guy who I worked for, actually, it was a gal at first, she was leaving and the position opened up, and I remember thinking about it a lot. I should apply. I was like, maybe I can juggle full-time work and going to school, and I didn't. And then the position closed, and I remember reaching out to the manager and saying, hey, I'm interested. And she was essentially like, and I loved her to death too. She was one of my mentors, Jody Gurin. But she was like, hey, the window closed, I'm sorry. And so I was like, okay, so be it. And a new guy came in and he was there for like 8 months, and it opened back up, and I applied again and I got the job. So in 2016, before I graduated, I had been working already full time as an ice and event center coordinator in Parks and Rec, while juggling school full time. And I joke that 2016 was a crazy year. I got my first job. I was finishing up school. I got married and I bought a house all that year. It was kind of
Wow. That's a big
wacko
year.
summer. It was. But it really, I think, when you ramp up the intensity that aggressively, I think it puts into perspective, you know, other moments in your life when you think things are crazy. It's like, well, it wasn't as crazy as it was back then. And I think that that's been, hugely helpful for me
Mhm.
professionally.
Yeah.
Um, so 2016, I'm working. Uh, I had my first year under my belt as a coordinator of the ice rink. And when I got the job, I remember telling Jody that I was going to leave in a year. I was pursuing accounting. I was going to be an accountant. And I actually had a job lined up as part of an audit team in Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I remember telling Jody, sitting down with her, I'm like, hey, the time's come. My year's up. I'm going to be moving on. And she was like, I think she always knew in the back of her head that she was going to find a way to make me stay.
Mhm.
But she hit me with, if I can make you stay, would you? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And so over the course of about a week, we went back and forth, and ultimately, I think my wife at the time was like, "What are you doing? Like, you're changing your career right when you're going to start." But I remember Jody sitting me down and telling me, I don't think you're gonna love your work like you would if you stayed in Parks and Rec.
Mm.
And so I ended up staying, and the rest is history. I just have been jumping around and growing and developing. But I think having the background in accounting and finance, especially the government accounting side, has been hugely beneficial for the data driven approach to decision making has been
Mm.
huge. But
Yeah, why don't you explain what that is? How at
yeah,
least how you use that to think? Because I think that's such and when you explain it, it's gonna make sense to people, but it's
yeah,
one of those things that doesn't make sense until you see it. So
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
bring us through that.
Yeah, I think data-driven decision making is kind of a catch-all word, like set of words as vocabulary.
Mhm.
Really, in all intensive purposes, what it means day in and day out for what we do is before you make a decision, gather as much data to support that decision or tell you that's the wrong decision, right? And it takes a little bit more homework, but the end results, I think, are typically much better.
Mhm.
So when we think about, I think that this is kind of part. part and parcel into problems that we see in parks and recreation. But a great example, if you're going to expand a park, before you take on 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 more acres of parks developed, you got to pull some data to support that decision making and really understanding the rippling effect of that decision. One of the things that we found, here specifically at the town of Sahuarita was we were really behind in the amount of parks professionals we had taking care of the assets, the park acreage we had. And so we've gone through a pretty healthy process and data models that show, essentially for every developed acre of park, and this changes depending on where you live, how many staff do you need to take care of those resources, right? And that's just one layer of that data-driven approach. Anything you do, if you're thinking about taking on a new event, gathering the data from the community, feedback, what do they want to see? What is it going to cost? What is the staff impact? Do you have enough resources? All that data that you can do a little bit of homework and collect before you make a decision, I think makes you that much better and makes for success when you start to execute a process.
Mm. And so the thing you're trying to avoid is to commit to a large event or commit to maintaining a property only to find out that you're already stretched thin. Now, what other event are you going to neglect to take on this new event? Or are you going to do that event and be understaffed and underfunded and it just not go off really well?
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. Because, in the reality, what we work with as Parks and Rec professionals is resources are typically finite, and we're really good at stretching them as far as we can, giving us the most we can. Not realizing though that, typically I think as Parks and Rec professionals, we want to be the yes men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And that can paint you into a corner pretty quick, right? And so it's just that mindset of, before I commit to anything, I'm going to do a little bit of homework and understand what that impact's going to be. And I think that's ultimately important for keeping your staff happy, making sure that we talk about it all the time, that we want to create longevity in our employment, so our staff aren't getting burnt out, whether it's they feel like they're totally underwater throughout the calendar of the year, or that they don't have enough funding to be successful for a programmatic effort they're undertaking. You really need to be very cautious about those decisions and what the rippling effect could be. But on the other side, it's not that you don't want to say no, it's that, when we say yes, we want to make sure that we deliver at a high level, because you start to gain a reputation as well. Like, you want to be the department, the organization that when we say we're going to do something, that there's not a question on our abilities to do it. And that data-driven approach, I think, ensures that. But, it's balance. We fight all the time. I wouldn't say we fight. We negotiate all the time, balancing resources between Parks and Rec with our other big departments, even here. And I know it's in several municipalities, with Public Works and Police Department, sometimes fire departments, depending on what the municipality oversees. And so that balance, it's hugely important to understanding what your resources are going to be and how you allocate them successfully to your programmatic efforts.
Now, maybe help people that aren't necessarily as deep in the weeds in Parks and Rec as you've gotten, especially from accounting and revenue generation. So let's just say a city collects. Are y'all funded off of property tax or sales tax?
Not property tax. So we have a little bit of sales tax. So I love how our finance director talks about our funding, our revenues. He calls it the color of money. Every pot of money has a different color and a different means to which we capture it. And it's different everywhere you go, right? But here at the town of Sahuarita, we're mostly funded through state shared revenues. The state of Arizona has an income tax, goes to the state divvies up that income tax to the 91 or 92 municipalities. And that's typically that's the most sizable component of what we operate with. We also have a sales tax here that benefits the town, but those are our two biggest buckets of funding that we have.
And so let's just say you get something from the state of Arizona, and then you have a little local sales tax.
Yeah.
And so that's 100% of what you get. Well, first of all, is that 100% of what you get, or do you have some things that you kind of support yourself with through, I don't know, a special
Yeah.
event, or is there any other little revenue stream for the city?
Yeah,
For
park department. We've done a little bit of creative revenue development, and so we've seen a little bit of a uptick now that we've really developed our programs. So our revenues are going up now, and I wouldn't say they're going up in the sense of like we're getting more. It's just that we're effectively programming finally. So we get some revenues in from our field rentals, baseball and multi-purpose field rentals, from Ramada rentals, from programs, so after school programs, camp programs, recreation programs. And the new one here over the last couple of years is we started a sponsorship program that helps us offset the cost of our big events. So that's a little bit of help too. But when we look at parks and recreation as a whole in the town of Sahuarita, we're seeing a growth on our cost recovery. So the cost recovery model, and most municipality parks and rec operate with this thought process, is if it's 100% of funding that we have to operate, how much of that are we capturing back in revenue? Ours has gone up from about 4 to 6% to last year was at 16%.
Oh, wow.
We're trying to get to 25%.
Now, well, that's amazing. How do you go? So that's a 400% increase from 4% to 16%. How did you, can you take us through how you, maybe, how did you capture that 4% and maybe create a baseline? And then what did you do to get from 4 to 16?
Yeah. So 4% was before I got here, and I think that it was just kind of the normal operations. I think a lot of
fees or registration fees, or
fees. So a lot of that 4 to 6% was housed primarily, and this is typical. You don't see a lot of revenues coming on the park side. It's more the recreation side.
Okay.
And our recreation side also handles our field rentals, and so that was occurring. We were seeing field rentals, user groups coming out and having baseball practice, soccer practice, and then families coming out and renting our Armada for birthday parties. I think that the most systematic change to gain the revenue increase has been we call it our core competencies. It's kind of something I lean on, is like when we talk about how we want to operate, we want to be really good at our core competencies. And core competencies are essentially, what are the things that you have a market advantage of that you need to be really good at to support your organization, right? So we were talking about this before the show. Municipalities have all this acreage and park space and resources. We have a market advantage to program those pieces of property. And so we took a really good, about a year period, paring down our activities and programs to the things that we knew were really important. It gave up some more time for our staff to also focus in on how do we be offering the best customer service possible to our sports organizations so that they can start renting more fields. And similarly with like events, and that kind of naturally led into developing a sponsorship program that we were serving, the support groups that were helping us put these things on. And so really, if we kind of at a high level look at what we did, it was really nailing down those core competencies and saying, hey, we want to be really good at managing our fields and renting them out, having really good recreation programs, having really good events, and ultimately taking care of what we already own. And that I think has led to a pretty, an increase in our revenues that has been pretty steady over the last 3 years.
Now, when you say sponsorship program, can you define that? That is something y'all developed as part of this growth model?
Yep. And so
what is that, or can you define that?
I think you probably are going to understand it very well, having the marketing background. But when we have our big townwide events, we found that we're bringing in thousands of people to, highlight our community and participate in something. Well, what a great platform to get businesses and organizations who want to be exposed to that clientele to jump on board with us and help us put them together. And so we, about 3 years ago, put together a sponsorship program where essentially, the hope was that we give way more to the businesses than they expect, that they feel like they're getting a really good value. And essentially what happens is they'll give us cash or in-kind benefits, so support. And what we'll do is we'll take their, their logo, and we'll give them, we have a slew of options, from having them as thank yous at our events, at the information booth. We'll do specific shout outs with, little videos on our marketing efforts through Facebook, social media platforms. We put them on our website as a support group. We do a lot to make it really beneficial to them. Banners at our fields, those kinds of things. And so the program itself, 3 years ago was non-existent. Last year we had $115,000 between cash and in-kind sponsorship. I think it was about 85,000 was cash, and that's very fluid for us. So we can program it back into our events very easily. The accounting side, the background on the government accounting side to unrestrict the funds and let us do that was a little bit finicky figuring out that model, but it's been hugely beneficial for us to add more programs to our events. Last year we had a big carnival that was completely free to the community because we had sponsorships.
Wow.
So,
yeah, and that's got to create a ton of community engagement, and your community is where these sponsors reside, correct? It's just local businesses.
Yeah, precisely. And we're seeing more regional now. We're so close to Tucson that now some of the bigger companies are getting involved. But it goes back to that core competencies, right? Like, we know exactly what our product is, and we're very good at selling that to these organizations and saying, hey, we have a tagline, parks for the people, right? Like, everything we do is for our community. And what we're doing with the funding they're giving us, and it's very upfront in our sponsorship packet, is every dollar you give to us is giving a dollar to the community. Like, we make our events completely free. So when you come to one of our events and you expect to get on like you see the carnival rides, you don't have to pay to get onto them. Like, that was very purposeful in our programming to do as much as we could for the community.
Oh, I bet you the kids and parents love that.
Yeah, we get pretty good responses from it.
How much? So how long does your carnival last? When is it? How long does it last? Yeah. How many people attend?
So it's our 1-day event. It's Fiesta Sahuarita. It's our biggest event, and it's the celebration of the incorporation of our town. That's in April, the first weekend of April. So it's just coming up here, April 5th. We're expecting between 25 and 30,000 people to attend.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many rides do y'all have?
Oh man, I think that they're going for 10 this year, but they're big. I mean, we got pictures from even just last year, and it's kind of crazy to see them all out on our field. We have put them out on one of our soccer fields, and just the crazy chair swing that goes up in the air, and like the haunted house and the big slides. And I mean, it's a fun event. It's a ton of fun.
Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. And it's all sponsorship driven, so the kids can ride as many times as it's open.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been huge.
Yeah, that's a great. Now, how close are y'all to? Y'all are what, 40,000? Do I remember that?
Yeah, we're right at 37, but we're growing pretty quick. I think we're like second or third in the state of Arizona for growth. But we're just like 15 miles south of Tucson. So we're really close to the, Tucson. We're essentially in the Tucson metro.
How big is the Tucson metro, counting all and everything else?
I think it's over 1 million. I think it's like 1.1 million.
Yeah.
There's several communities that make that up, right? The city of Tucson, the big one. We got Marana, we got Oro Valley. And so there's several, cities, municipalities in this area. We live in a bit of a valley, and there's a lot of us.
So, and I know a lot of Parks and Rec have this, I don't know if it's a dilemma, but you just got to structure yourself a little differently. There are those that, you're 37,000 in the middle of nowhere. You are the big city. And then there's 37,000 next to a big metropolis or metropolitan area. So how do you consider building out your Parks and Rec knowing that people can just drive 15 minutes to maybe do something that a big city would offer?
Yeah, it's a struggle we have here, right? And the reality is, and I think it's preaching to the choir a lot, but regardless of where you go, the municipality you enter is going to have challenges. And I think that, being able to compartmentalize those and figure out what are the real needs is the start to finding solutions. So for us, it was exactly that. We get people going to Tucson all the time and spending their dollars. We'd like to see them come here. And so a big layer of our programming efforts has been, how do we offer those almost hubs or those tourist destinations that could get people excited to come visit the town of Sahuarita. And it's
Mhm.
very unique to us. I think that the master planning process helps with that. Like, what does a 10-year plan look like for your organization, and what are, the critical decisions that need to be made to be able to support your master plan. But I think at a baseline as well is listening to your community. We do a lot of surveying, we do a lot of community feedback, because they'll tell you, right? Like, we need more pickleball, we need to have bigger, better events, we need to have, one of the things we're developing right now is a big disc golf course. That is all a byproduct of us being curious about, what our community's asking for.
Mm. Okay, so we're at the halfway point, and
Yeah.
we actually had a good discussion about managing social media, staying in touch with your community, trying to get people engaged, attending your events, knowing what you have to offer. And in today's world of social media, a lot of cities are, starting to build these communities, but this can pull you outside of your area of expertise because, a social media manager is a skill set, much like a videographer. This is actually one of the ways that we are supporting the show. If you'd like to work with us and have the Daily Parks and Rec Show help you manage this, we just finished a competition promoting this as a service, and Hannah made the winning video. So it's just 1 minute video to kind of explain it. And then because Devin does this so well in his city, I think we'll talk about what they do to manage their social media and keeping their community engaged with everything the Parks and Rec department has going on. So I'll go ahead and hit play, and then we'll come right back.
Are you struggling to get the word out about your parks and recreation programs and events? You work hard to create activities that bring people together, but if no one knows about them, attendance stays low and engagement suffers. Traditional marketing methods aren't enough, and managing social media can be overwhelming. That's where we come in. Introducing the Daily Parks and Rec Show, your partner for professional promotional videos and social media management tailored for parks and recreation departments. With our help, you'll get high-quality content that connects with your community, increases participation, and builds lasting relationships. We'll showcase your events, highlight your parks, and make sure your message is seen and heard. By working with us, you'll amplify the impact of your programs and drive stronger community engagement. Let's work together to showcase the incredible work you're doing. Contact us today to get started.
All right, so that was just a little promo that the video people put together.
Wonderful.
So we can do that for any special event you have, any parade, and then we also have social media managers on staff that are helping us to grow the Daily Parks and Rec Show. We'll probably end up with about 20 full-time staffers. We're up to about 7 right now. Working with us in this capacity really helps us to stay on target to build a media company for the Daily Parks and Rec Show. So hopefully we'll be able to work with a lot of cities, helping them to promote what's going on. So Devin, why don't you tell us, how y'all kind of saw that as something y'all needed to invest in and grow in to stay in touch with your cities?
Yeah, happy to answer, Craig. So I know I just mentioned master planning. I think that it's hugely important. One of the things that came up pretty strongly in our master planning effort was communication, and we learned pretty quickly as well that we were doing all this good work to put together our programs, and then day of to execute, we weren't having a lot of participation. And so even on the ground floor, like boots on the ground, we realized that there was a need there. We got to get the word out, especially with all the good work that our team's doing. So we've gone through, it's been growing pains and trying to kind of figure out what the best game plan for our department has been. But it's gotten us to the point now where we have a dedicated marketing specialist to our department, Lily Nelson. She's wonderful and has completely transformed our marketing efforts, our social media presence, our website, platform, newsletters, everything. And then we have a part-time help with Lily, Alyssa, who's been great as well. And if you take a look at our Facebook, you'll kind of see some of the themes that they're pulling through. But man, they're so creative and so passionate about what they do, and getting the word out. But really what's occurred over the last 2 or 3 years now is we built a really good website platform. We're organizing and updating it pretty consistently. It actually won an award here locally when we got it online for the improvements it's made. But with that, newsletters, and then just a complete revamp of our social media and how we're marketing ourselves. I'm a strong believer in hiring the right people and getting out of their way. So
Yeah.
I know when they need help, they'll ask me. But in a lot of times, they know exactly what they want to do and they're pursuing. And it's been absolutely wonderful. But the importance of it for us has been having that essentially one-to-one contact to our community to say, hey, we got something new or there's something occurring, and we can put it out fairly quickly, and people know and they come out and they participate, and that's been huge for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And really just taking a step and saying, hey, we need to communicate better, and let's assign anyone in our department to this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Social media, like any relationship, has to be cared for and nurtured. And so just think of it any relationship that you have as a friend. If you never talk to them, if you never call and check in on them, if you never wish them happy birthday, if you never invite them to a fishing trip that you're planning, then the relationship just kind of dies.
Yeah.
And so in a very similar way, if you're not communicating and checking in on your people and inviting them to things, the relationship's just non-existent, and they might just drive to the neighboring city to give them their money because they are communicating with them.
Yeah.
And so just having a human mind on it, even if it's part-time, even if it's a staffer that here's an extra hat, that's a step in the right direction. And then that's just step one.
Yeah.
You can choose to work with someone like us. You can hire someone in-house like Devin and them are doing. All those are great things that can be done.
Yeah, you nailed it, Craig. And it's, talking to my fellow Parks and Rec professionals, I understand too. And we talked about it earlier that resources are finite. And it's not just easy for every community to say, hey, I need a marketing specialist, give it to me, right? And so kind of similar vein to the data-driven approach, like we understood we had a need, and we took baby steps to get to where we're at now with dedicated staff. And along the way was some contracting, getting support outside to say, hey, it's working. We monitor the metrics from visitors to our webpage to social media interactions and views, and we started capturing all that data to show, hey, we have these really good platforms, but they're not being utilized at the way that they should. And when the opportunity arose, we took it. We had a vacant office assistant position that we reclassified to add some marketing support, and got started with this endeavor, kind of like you're talking about, see if somebody could do it. And then we measured. We kept on top of those metrics and showed like, hey, we just dipped our toes into this thing, and look at what's happening from the participation and the viewing, and even down to the point where we were pulling metrics on when we open up a program, look at how much faster those programs are filling up, right?
Yeah.
And we took all of that data, and then again, with the person we hired, did another reclassification and said, hey, we need this full-time dedicated to this, and we can afford to put this person in charge of it. And that was Lily. And she's run the race now, and it's been, just baby steps. It wasn't, we said, hey, we need a marketing specialist, our marketing coordinator now. And we got it. It was baby steps and capturing that data to show our decision makers, who are ultimately, our elected officials, mayor and council, hey, this could work. And then following up once now that we have Lily in a role, we're reporting every month, how many people are coming to our website? What does our participation look like? How many views are we getting on social media? What is our likes, our base growing at? And it's just been a really cool process to see that unfold.
Yeah, really. So maybe what's the initial budget commitment and man hours that y'all said, do we have somebody on staff that can just do 10 hours a week? And then as far as what do you pay monthly to an outside specialist in those early days? And then kind of how you walk us through how you kind of scaled up. What was this toe dipping component look like? What was that as far as time commitment and funding?
That's a great question. So, one of the things that we realized fairly quickly, and I think it's fairly familiar because I've seen it in other organizations that I even worked for,
Hmm.
was you become the wearer of all hats.
Hmm.
And so social media was one of those hats that kind of got tossed around to whoever was running a program. And so, but that creates, inconsistency in our messaging and our efforts with the marketing. And so one of our first steps was really kind of taking a look at, how much time is everybody dedicating in their work week? Is it an hour here and an hour there? And we fairly quickly were able to pull together and say, we have about a half-time position worth of time that everybody's dedicating. If we took it off their plates, they could
Right.
really focus on their work, not the marketing.
Mm.
And we
So,
use
so,
that.
so
Go ahead.
basically what you're saying is that let's say you had someone in charge of baseball league or programming that, and they were putting 1 hour a week on LinkedIn, I mean, on Facebook, and then someone else was putting 2 hours. And so collectively you're like, I think we found 20 hours of effort across our department. Is that kind
Precisely.
of what happened? Okay, I see.
Precisely. And again, back to that data-driven approach, when you start thinking that way, you start getting curious about everything you're doing. And
Mm.
so when we started talking marketing and communication, we very quickly started getting curious on like, well, what is everybody doing? And we were able to fairly quickly, estimate what those hours look like. And by chance, we had an opportunity with a vacant position that was in our administrative team, which is where we wanted to house the marketing efforts.
Right.
So we were like, let's take a stab at this. Like, it's not going to hurt us. This position's been vacant for, at the time, I think it was like 6 months. We were doing just fine. So we were like, let's reclass this. And we actually, I think the name of the position we called it was an administrative and social media specialist. So
Mm.
50% admin, 50% marketing.
Mm.
And when we got Lily hired, she was doing both absolutely wonderfully. But just introducing a small amount of consistency in our marketing and support to our staff who are putting the programs together, that fairly quickly became more and more of her job, to the point where we were like, we really want you to do this full time.
Yeah.
And it was easy to just kind of reclass her into a fully dedicated marketing coordinator, and that was hugely helpful for us.
So describe, now Lily was not working for the city at the time. Y'all went and
Mhm.
found her. She came in.
No, actually, funny enough, and I know we've talked about this even ahead of this, is like one of the things we're very passionate about is, I think most municipalities, Parks and Rec, have part-time staff, and
Mhm.
we're really, trying to inspire those staff that are typically high schoolers for us to be thinking about this as a career. It's there's a need, and it's becoming more and more so as we move forward. So Lily was one of our part-time staff who, the timing worked out where she graduated, and we were like, hey, we want you on our team, and we brought her in. And so we're seeing more and more of our part-time staff, especially as an organization that's growing. When we have those opportunities, especially internal, we're trying to give our staff the training and seeing that desire from them that they want to be doing this full time, giving them those opportunities to succeed and be in good positions here in the organization.
Now, what was her, is this something she did or she went to school for?
Yeah.
Or she just has a passion around it and just YouTubed it and figured it out kind of thing?
She it's funny enough, and I hope when she sees this, she's like, okay, you got it right. She actually has a degree in library, is a library sciences, I think is what they call it.
Mhm.
But when she interviewed for the position, she, for with a family company, had already been doing a ton of marketing for a family business. And
Nice.
she's incredibly creative, and she got all of it right. And so when we brought her on, she was qualified. She started running the race, and man, I can't tell you what it's done for the organization, externally with communication, but also, internally, having somebody that we can lean on to help us through the marketing efforts, so
Yeah.
our staff can really focus on, program, which is good.
And I think this is a general rule of life. Like a lot of times it's, if you take the 20 hours that they were spending across maybe 5 or 6 different people, each putting in their 2 hours a week or 3 hours a week, and you just say, okay, y'all stop doing that. We're going to let one person get really good at this one task, at this one niche within that. The 20 hours that one person can do when specializing in something is sometimes 3 or 4 times more valuable to your department
Yeah.
than 5 or 6 people kind of halfway doing it, because a lot of times to get depth, you just have to stay focused for longer. It's
You
kind of
do.
like when you get the little magnifying glass and you
Mhm.
focus the sun's rays, you can burn the little leaf, but otherwise the leaves don't get burned by the sun rays. So being able to focus one person, sometimes you can get 3 or 4 times the
Yeah,
results of allowing someone to say, this is your focus.
you're
Um,
absolutely right.
and now she's doing this full time.
She is, yeah, and she has an assistant now, part-time, that we're
Nice.
looking at plans to make full-time as well. But you absolutely nailed it, Craig. And I think that that's, at managing an organization, that's what you have to kind of keep your finger on the pulse with is, what is everybody doing and what should they be doing, right?
Mhm.
And if what they're doing isn't what they should be doing, there's probably a need that needs to be addressed. And
Mhm.
that's, where we start getting curious and looking at the data to support our decision making. But, same thing, it's the same process we followed on our park side. 4 years ago, we had 4 parks professionals. We're up to 10 now. We're likely going to see 12 as we go into this new fiscal year. But it all came down to understanding what our staff were supposed to be doing to take care of our community, provide the level of service, and really getting them to be specialized in their work, right? That if they had extra things on their plate, like let's take a look at that and see what we need to do organizationally to be effective in our staff programming, so that our department and our town can be taken care of.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think with anything in life, this is kind of a life lesson. If you have focus and consistency, you'll get there.
Yeah, you're
Um,
absolutely
you don't dilute yourself too much. I think I learned this in sports is you have to be consistent
right.
with your
Mhm.
training and then stay focused on what you're trying to accomplish. And that's kind of worked out for me in life and business and pretty much anything else. Um, let's talk about the consultants that you have to sometimes bring on where you need a little more. And that's kind of where we've been used is we've
Mhm.
worked with social media managers because they're not videographers. They don't know
Yeah.
how to edit video and sound and capture stuff and create a 60-second or something. So they've got the event and they can work the social media platform, but they just need a digital asset like a 60-second commercial on your parade, Christmas parade, or your 4th of July thing. And that's where we can kind of come in as well. So how have y'all used third party outside
Yeah.
uh, to help them?
Yeah. I think it kind of boils down to being very comfortable admitting when you're outclassed or you don't have the means to get it done. And that's when we'll start looking at outside help. So a great example, is our website. We knew that we needed a good platform. And I guess the metaphor is like we wanted a good car because ours was falling apart, but we
Mhm.
couldn't build the car, right? Like we knew what we needed out of performance. We knew the specs we wanted, but we couldn't build it ourselves. So we brought in a third party to help us get it built, and they worked with us to kind of kick it off, knowing though that we were going to ultimately take ownership and have to do the O&M, right? Change the oil, change the filters, get longevity out of it, and that's where Lily has come in and now taken ownership over it. But it wasn't the initial build, right? So I think what it boils down to is having that understanding to say, it may be a time constraint, it may be an expertise constraint, it may be that we need more data that can be provided by a consultant. But when you find yourself in that position, I think, especially for the sanctity of your team, not assuming that they're just going to be able to get it done, that's where we'll start looking at the outside support with a contractor or somebody who has that capability that can come in and support us
Mhm.
deliver the need. And then long term, we may take ownership and work with it, right? And that even goes down to like our signature events. We have so much going on that we don't have enough staff in house that can take photos. So we'll contract a photographer or videographer out to help get more and really capture the moment, right?
Mhm.
But it really comes down to a decision of an understanding of what our capabilities are. and making that decision to say, hey, this is a moment where we need that support. Let's move on it and be a decision maker and go.
Right. Right. And if you can do a good job of hiring a photographer, hiring a videographer to capture the in-person event, and then you feed that into a staff that can make videos, that can make shorts, and you've got a social media team, then you can basically build momentum from the end of that event, and you have 1 year to kind of raise awareness and build momentum so that the following year, with all that content you captured, and a lot of these digital assets have extremely long shelf lives. So you can capture the fair or the festival from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But the kid on the swing and the hot dog being and all this kind of stuff being served, it's like these assets have an indefinite lifespan.
You're right.
Continue to use them to reinforce the brand of the city,
Yeah.
the brand of the Parks and Rec department, and the brand of the event.
Yeah.
And then your event just becomes like part of the woodworks. It's just so well communicated.
You're right. And that's essentially what we experienced. You nailed it, Craig, is I think the first year we were like, let's revamp and let's build on Fiesta. And we started looking at our catalog of like historical photos. It was like, man, we don't have a lot. Like,
yeah.
How do we market this next year if we don't have good resources now to do it? Right.
Yeah.
And in those moments, I think those are the great opportunities to take some lessons and learn and grow. And for us, it was, well, let's do it right this year. Right. We know we're not going to see the benefit until a year now out. But when we get to that point, I don't want to be in the same position. So let's make that decision now. And so I remember the first year we contracted a photographer and videographer and how beneficial that was. And it kind of became a no-brainer after that. It was like, there's so much benefit to capturing these moments. And even on the side that the community loves to see it, like they want to see that, it kind of became a no-brainer for us. And it's never just one thing that tips the domino. It's like the culmination of a lot of little decisions. And I think that was part of that justification ultimately that got us to be able to do a little bit more hiring and develop a marketing team. Was all those little things, but also being savvy in capturing that as justification to say, here's the reason why we want to do this, right? Like we're not being, a knee jerk in our reactions. We are really trying to plan and be effective, right? The whole concept of failing to plan is planning to fail, right? I think that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah. And what I love about media is when you decide to invest in media in any capacity, whether it's you're hiring someone, like a photographer, like you would hire for a wedding. You hire a photographer for a wedding to capture the moment so that you can remember it for the rest of your life. And so these guys have a gift. They're artists, and they have a gift for just capturing that right moment where the daughter's dancing with the father and all the bridesmaids and grooms together, the cutting of the cake, the ceremony. And so you're hiring someone that is looking for those moments that just really capture your event, your city, whatever. And there's really no other way but hiring one of those guys to go do it, because I don't know how they do it. I've got the same phone. I've got the same iPhone. Even get a fancy camera, but my pictures just look terrible.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And as an organization, we're leaning into it, right? Like, and I think it's like just having that, I think it's a healthy understanding of like, this just isn't what we do, right? Like we don't do that. Like we're going to get the help, and that's okay.
Yeah. No, there's a great, so I'm very close friends with one of the best photographers probably in America, and he is super expensive. So only super wealthy people can afford him for their weddings and stuff.
Maybe he'll sponsor one of our events. We'll get him out.
Yeah. But his name is Aaron Hogan. He does amazing work here in Baton Rouge, and his wife produces short films and movies, like Hollywood level stuff. They're like a little power couple. He happens to live, I met him through a business networking thing, but he sent me this, let me see if I can find it. He sent me this YouTube channel of this very famous photographer, and he's got like, I want to say 4 or 5 million followers. But let me see if I can do it. I think it was Peter. But if you go watch his stuff, and maybe I'll post it in the show notes, but if you go watch his stuff and you see how much effort goes into just lighting, here it is, Peter McKinnon. So if you just look up Peter, McKinnon, and you start to see just how much effort goes into the lighting, the angles, the shot, the background and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, this guy is a master artist. And so that's kind of what you need to capture your events. Mm-hmm. And now the videographers who are working behind a computer, they can only make a terrible picture look so good. But if you've got good pictures and good shots and good images, they can make a banger video for you that'll last, 5, 6, 7 years. You continue to use that to support the work y'all are doing. It's just like that wedding photo album that you go through for decades after the event. Same thing with the little video and stuff. You kind of want to do the same thing. And then you put that in the hands of your social media team that you might have on staff, and they can just run with it. And they continue to maybe use that several times throughout the year. That's kind of the game plan there.
Yeah, you nailed it. And that's essentially what we're experiencing. And it is so nice to be able to jump back in that catalog. And it's funny too, because we see it even like when we're doing bigger presentations, we have our leadership team, the directors and our town manager's office. When we're doing big presentations, it's nice to have that catalog to offer to other departments to say, hey, you want to put a fun picture in, we have a picture of, the police department serving the community at Fiesta, and PD has to do a presentation on community. Hey, we got something for you, right?
That's right.
So the rippling effect can really be more broad than even what happens in your department if you're in Parks and Rec. And that's that return on investment that we continue to see now with the way we're handling the marketing efforts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, we've had departments that they get so good at representing what they're doing that the police department, the fire department say, well, we have messages we need to get out to our community about public safety, about fire safety, about what to do if you have an issue or some kind of domestic thing going on. And so they're kind of looking at your team, your communication team, and they want a little piece of it. So we've seen that happen.
Yeah, well, we see it.
Yeah. That hour flew by. I can't believe we're at 57 minutes.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Okay, we have to do another one because I really want to go into how you did a city turnaround where you have a city that's just not where it could be, and so we're going to do a second episode. We'll have to plan it to bring you on to tell that story because I think that will be hugely valuable for the community.
Yeah. I'd love it, Craig, and I think the message to everybody is you can do it. Like it's boiling down your problems, making decisions, not being afraid to fail, but you can do it. It's out. The world is your oyster, and there's possibilities. Be that change agent to make it happen.
Yeah, fantastic. Now our last little commercial that we made. This is hot off the press. I finalized it yesterday, and so we're still trying to make a little tweaks on it. But if you would. One of the ways you can also support the channel is we sell these LED lights. Again, this is kind of our Girl Scout cookie that we use to just continue to do what we do. So give us some feedback on it. And of course, if you ever want to buy just one light, it goes a long way to support our developers and our creative artists that are creating in this space. So, and also if you ever need us to work with social media management, I love Devin's story of how he got his city involved in just communicating on these new platforms. So appreciate you coming on the show, Devin. And I can't wait to do this again.
Right back at you. Pleasure. Yep. And we may be contracting you soon.
Yeah. Let me know what we can do to help, man. We'll be there for you.
Well, Craig, thank you for everything you're doing too. You deserve some kudos for the work you're doing to represent our profession and grow.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I cannot think of a better industry. As much as I work with Parks and Recreation and I have friends in it, I never sat down and said, I want to tell y'all a story. What is your story? No. The depth. Like, go watch Gabby's interview from last week. If you want to know how to do good after school care, This girl was from a single mom in Miami area, and her dad was not around, and she grew up in after school care from 6th grade. And even when she was a young little girl, she was like, I'm going to have your job one day. She was telling this to like the people running the Parks and Rec department. And she did. And so when you look at how well her after school care programs are, it comes all the way from childhood. Like
Yeah.
that's the depth of her current programs is that's where she met her friends. That's where she grew up. That's where she learned about leadership. That's where she learned about and that's where she got involved in Parks and Rec. And that's just one of hundreds of stories like yourself that is so fun to tell. And so, yeah, we're a group of digital storytellers, and I love this. This is an industry I'm going to be here for forever.
Yeah. Well, it's appreciated, and you're going to leave your mark, and I think you're doing good work.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
I'm trying to stay up on your podcast now too. I've loved every one of them.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep them coming, and we'll have you again soon.
Perfect. Well, I can't wait, Craig. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Devin.
We'll see you.
Wow, what a great one. Devin's he's going to be one of those rock stars. I love watching, knowing that guys like him are just great stewards of some of the most beautiful property in our communities, putting on great events, communicating, just working hard to create these common spaces and these common events that bring a community together. I mean, think about what a city would be like if you just had your property and there was no community effort for not just infrastructure like roads and electricity and utilities and garbage pickup and fire and police. I mean, all that's going on too behind the scenes. But what I love about what Parks and Recreation does is they create those spaces for you to just walk off your property, go spend some time in an area that's designed to create beauty, to bring you in the nature, to give you a place to spend with your family, spend times with your grandkids, maybe participate in sports, but then also to put on these annual community events like a festival, like a Christmas parade, like an Easter egg hunt, like a 4th of July celebration. And every year, this is the team of people. This is the army of people. And Devin's their fearless leader in his little town of Sahuarita. Oh my gosh, I know I'm butchering it. When it came out of my mouth, I knew I said it wrong. But in Arizona, right outside of Tucson. And he's got this staff that this is their life. This is what they do for their community. And I love being able to tell that story, being able to highlight what the work they're doing and what goes into it. I don't think people realize the hard work and effort and the diversity of the team that goes into just cutting the grass, putting on the farmer's market, maintaining the graveyards, putting on these events, maintaining the swimming pool. Like it's such a diverse group of people, a group of skill set that goes into maintaining common space under the banner of Parks and Recreation. And I don't know what you think about Parks and Recreation as far as what it's in charge of, but let me make it simple for you. They're the catch-all for anything in the entire city system. They end up inheriting a farmer's market, and directors are like, how is this under Parks and Recreation? They inherit graveyards. They inherit the median between, roads and stuff. It's just, if there's a project or an asset that the city somehow inherits, typically it's going to fall under the park director, and his team's got to figure out how to manage it, how to make it successful, how to deal with this new big piece of property that they got donated by a benefactor. And now what do we want to do with it? We want to put a park, want to put a swimming pool, want to put pickleball, want to put tennis courts. We just want open green space, and they're managing all of it. It's such a diverse group of people, super talented. So great job to all you Parks and Rec people. We're going to keep telling this story, and we're going to get the word out. And of course, y'all know I'm a huge Bitcoiner, and I've got a lot of Bitcoiners nationwide watching my Parks and Rec journey and vice versa. So it's funny bringing these two crowds together. They could not be more different, my Bitcoin people and my Parks and Rec people. But I love watching y'all intermingle because I'm kind of sandwiched in the middle, getting feedback from my Bitcoin people. I had no idea this was going on, and this is what Parks and Rec people did. And then I've got a lot of, small government people saying, how do I get into Bitcoin? And it's kind of comical being in the middle. But anyway, all right. So Chris, great job on making this LED promotional thing. If you need LED lights, please consider buying through the Daily Parks and Rec show. It's a very simple light. It's made to last forever. This sucker has 100,000-hour lifespan. It's made for your neighborhood park. You would give this to your electrician on staff or your local electrician, and just you can buy one. They start around $850, and they're direct replacements. So this is to fit inside your maintenance budget. It's very budget friendly. They're super easy to install and maintain. The maintenance is nothing. If they ever give you a trouble, we send a brand new one to you, no questions asked. We only do business with cities, and all of the proceeds go to support the work we do, telling the story of Parks and Recreation. So even if you just want to buy one light from us, that goes a long way to support a lot of the digital artists that we employ and that call the Daily Parks and Rec show home. And Chris made this video for us over the weekend. So he was able to make this just in 3 or 4 days. Now, Chris could do something like this for your next event as well. So you can either purchase an LED light from us, or you can have Chris make you a video for your next festival or for your next parade or any annual event that you have. And then we also have social media managers that are working hard to build out our platform, and we also help other cities as well. So if you'd like to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and get your fields lit or your social media managed and help support the storytelling and the creation of what I think is the first media company inside of Parks and Rec. I wish there were more, because this is a great story to be told, and there's a lot of people nationwide that need representing. There's no way I could ever have all the directors and stories and coaches and just superintendents. We only have like 200 shows a year, 250 shows a year that we could even have people on. And I wish we had more bandwidth. I wish there were more media companies representing the industry of Parks and Recreation. But if we're the first one going at it at this level, so be it. We'll do it, and we welcome others to do the same. It's a great industry to represent. It's a great industry to be a part of. And we will be in Texas next week live. Please stop by and see us. And even if you don't want to come on the show, it's really low pressure. You just sit down. I'll ask you, how do you like the convention? Why do you come to Traps? Why don't we give a good pitch of why others should attend the Texas State Annual Convention, specifically made for Parks and Recreation? Why should you bring your staff members here? What do you get out of it? If you're not attending these state events, you're really doing a disservice to yourself and your staff, because they learn so much and they understand and get great ideas that they would never have gotten any other way. And it can save them a lot of time when they're reinventing the wheel. The networking is amazing. The vendors there are amazing. And it really is a great social event. I've never been to a state association and they didn't have really good events after the class is in, usually from 5 o'clock to 9 or 10 o'clock. They'll usually do 1, 2, or 3 really good special events that bring the community together so you can socialize. So it's not all about just learning and working and networking. And there is a social component, and you can tell that a lot of these people have deep, long-lasting friendships, and this is kind of like their family reunion every annual event. And so if you haven't gone, please go, even if it's just you, the director, and your assistant director, but try to bring as many people as you can, because everyone's going to get something out of it. Now, of course, if you can attend the big one and NRPA or some of the regional ones, those are amazing as well. Texas is kind of like a mini NRPA. It's thousands of Parks and Rec professionals will be there. And so I highly encourage anyone to go, continue to go, send your staff there. They're going to love it. They're going to get a lot out of it. It's kind of overwhelming. There's so much stuff to do there that you really just can't get to it all. But just, pace yourself. That's the key when attending these events. All right, so I will play. We'll go ahead and end with Chris's LED light promotion with "Tell me what y'all think." Please consider buying an LED light from us or having us manage your social media, create a video for you. That helps fund everything we're doing. We kind of live off of that, and really would love to work with y'all. So Craig LeBlanc signing off. We'll see y'all here again tomorrow, 12 noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. We have another special guest, and Devin, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Again, he's one of the all-stars. I'm going to have him back because you've got to hear about his turnaround and how he did it and how he thinks through it. He's just a smart guy. And I think, that's the kind of guys we want to lift up and say, look, like he said, you can do it. You can inherit a system that's haven't been neglected for a little while, and you can turn it around and make it a very successful Parks and Rec department, just like Devin did. And so I want him to come back and tell us that story. So y'all have an awesome day. Love you guys. See y'all tomorrow.
When you invest in our high-performance LED sports arena lights, you're not just upgrading your facilities, you're helping us illuminate the untold stories of parks and recreation communities. Every purchase directly supports the Daily Parks and Rec Show, a media platform on a mission to celebrate the heart and soul of our local parks and programs. From after-school activities to summer leagues, these spaces shape lives, and their stories deserve to be told. Why your support matters. Capturing community impact. Your contribution helps us assemble a talented team of digital artists, storytellers, and filmmakers to create compelling videos, articles, and short films that spotlight how Parks and Rec programs change lives. Sharing untold stories. From a child's first home run to lifelong friendships forged on the court, we'll document these priceless moments and share them with the world. Inspiring the next generation. By highlighting the joy, inclusivity, and opportunities found in our parks, we foster a deeper appreciation for these vital community spaces. Light up arenas, brighten futures. Your choice to install LED sports arena lights isn't just a smart investment in energy efficiency and performance, it's an investment in stories that deserve to be told. Be part of the story. Take action today. Purchase LED sports arena lights and help us shine a spotlight on the heartwarming stories that define our parks and communities. Contact us now to learn more about our products and how your support fuels the Daily Parks and Rec Show. Together, we'll shine a light on the moments that matter most.